Sean Richardson was 43 and spent his days fixing broken air conditioners in Phoenix strip malls. Most people saw a tired man in dusty work boots. Brooke, his wife, made sure they did. At dinner in Scottsdale, she laughed and called him broke and pathetic, while her friends drank wine worth more than his truck payment. Nobody at that table knew Sean controlled the investment group buying Brooke's company. The next morning, Claire Whitmore saw him enter the executive boardroom and nearly dropped her coffee. "Mr. Richardson, sir, comment, your country, and local time below before we continue. And if you like stories where silence turns out to be power, subscribe now." The next part only gets worse for Brooke. Sean Richardson's alarm rang at 5:10 every morning. Not music, not birdsong, just a dry electronic beep from a $20 clock radio sitting beside a scratched oak nightstand. The sound cut through the darkness of the small North Phoenix house before sunrise ever touched the windows. Sean reached over and turned it off immediately. Brooke stayed asleep. She always slept another hour. Sean sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, elbows on his knees, staring at the floorboards, while the air conditioner hummed softly overhead. The room smelled faintly of lavender lotion and dust from the old ceiling fan. Then he stood. By 5:24, he was already outside. Phoenix mornings felt cold for about 20 minutes before the desert started heating up. Sean leaned against his faded blue Ford F-150 at a Chevron station off Cave Creek Road, while black coffee filled a paper cup beside him. The cashier knew him by name. "Morning, Sean, morning." That was usually the entire conversation. He bought the same breakfast almost every day. Black coffee, ham sandwich in plastic wrap, sometimes peanuts if he knew the workday would run long. At 5:41, he checked the work orders on his phone. 3 residential HVAC calls. 1 emergency repair behind a dentist office in Tempe. Another rooftop unit replacement near Glendale. Normal work. Sweaty work. Invisible work. The kind of work most people only notice when something stopped functioning. Sean preferred it that way. By noon, Arizona heat rolled across the city like an open furnace door. 113 degrees downtown. Asphalt shimmered under sunlight. Metal tools burned against bare skin if he forgot his gloves for even a second. Sean climbed roofs while office workers sat inside chilled buildings, drinking cucumber water and complaining about Wi-Fi speed. He never complained. Around 1:15 p.m., he sat inside the truck with the engine off, eating half a sandwich while sweat dried across the back of his neck. His work shirt carried the stitched logo of Desert Crest Heating and Cooling above the pocket. A cheap uniform, grease stains near the cuffs, thread pulling loose at the shoulder seam. Most people saw that shirt before they saw him. Brooke definitely did. 7 years earlier, she used to look at him differently. Back then, Sean still drove the same truck, still wore work boots, still worked long hours. But Brooke had once called him steady, safe, honest. At the beginning, that mattered to her. Or maybe she simply liked the way Sean listened when she talked. She had been 29 when they met at a charity event in Mesa. Brooke worked junior marketing for a small agency then. Sean barely spoke during dinner, but he remembered details. Her favorite wine, her fear of flying, the fact she hated men who talked too loudly in restaurants. 3 dates later, she called him calm. 2 years later, she married him. 5 years later, she started pretending she had married beneath herself. The changes arrived slowly enough that most people would have missed them. Sean didn't. Brooke stopped posting photos with him online first. Then she stopped inviting him to company events. Then came the corrections. You pronounce it differently. Don't wear that jacket tonight. Just let me do the talking. Small comments. Sharp little cuts, delivered casually enough to deny later. At first, Sean told himself stress had changed her. West Frame Creative had grown fast after landing a luxury resort account in Scottsdale. Brooke started spending more time around executives, consultants, investors, people who measured status through watches, neighborhoods, schools, and dinner reservations. The higher she climbed, the more embarrassed she became by things that looked ordinary, especially her husband. 3 months earlier, Sean overheard Brooke talking on speakerphone in the kitchen while he repaired a leaking sink faucet. I swear, Lindsay, if Sean shows up in that truck tomorrow, I'm parking around the corner. She laughed afterward. Not cruelly. Worse. Carelessly. Sean kept tightening the pipe beneath the sink while cold water dripped across his knuckles. He never mentioned hearing it. Another time, Brooke introduced him to a client at a rooftop cocktail party in Scottsdale. This is Sean, she said quickly. He works in maintenance. Maintenance? Not owner, not investor, not businessman, just maintenance. The client nodded politely before turning back toward a man discussing venture capital near the bar. Sean remembered Brooke watching that interaction carefully, measuring it, learning from it. That was the moment he understood something had shifted permanently inside the marriage. Not anger, not hatred, hierarchy. Brooke had started seeing him as a social liability. At 6:40 that evening, Sean returned home carrying a tool bag over one shoulder. The garage smelled like hot concrete and motor oil. Brooke's white Audi Q5 was already parked inside, clean, detailed, untouched by dust. Sean stepped into the kitchen quietly. Brooke sat at the island counter, scrolling through emails on her tablet. A glass of white wine rested beside her. You're late, she said without looking up. Emergency call in Tempe. She nodded absently. Then her eyes lifted toward his shirt. You're wearing that tomorrow? Sean set his keys down slowly. Tomorrow. The dinner. Blackstone Prime. I told you last week. He remembered immediately. Dinner with her co-workers and friends in Scottsdale. The kind of night Sean usually avoided. You never said it was formal. It's not formal, Brooke replied. Just try not to look exhausted. Sean looked at her for a second. Not angry, just tired. I'll shower first, he said. Brooke exhaled sharply through her nose. Sean, I'm serious. Trevor Hale is going to be there. Claire, too. These people matter around the company. There it was again. These people, as if Sean belonged somewhere below them. He opened the refrigerator quietly and grabbed a bottle of water. What exactly do you want me to do? He asked. Brooke finally looked directly at him. Honestly, she said, just don't sit there looking miserable all night. The kitchen fell silent after that. Only the hum of the refrigerator remained. Sean twisted the cap off the water bottle slowly. He studied Brooke's face while she returned to her tablet. Perfect hair, perfect posture. Expensive silk blouse she bought 2 weeks earlier after receiving her quarterly bonus. She looked polished now. Corporate. Sharp around the edges, like someone constantly performing for an invisible audience. Sean suddenly realized something uncomfortable. Brooke no longer acted differently around strangers. than she did around him. The performance had become permanent. He drank half the bottle in one long swallow. Then he walked toward the hallway without another word. Behind him, Brooke spoke again. "And please," she said casually, "don't talk about air conditioners all night." Sean stopped walking for half a second. Only half. Then he continued down the hallway while evening sunlight faded across the kitchen tile. Upstairs, Brooke returned to her emails. Downstairs, Sean stood alone in the laundry room, staring at his work shirt hanging beside the dryer. A loose thread dangled from the sleeve. He cut it off carefully with a pocket knife. Then he checked the time. Blackstone Prime dinner reservation. Tomorrow. 7:30 p.m., Scottsdale. Blackstone Prime sat near the corner of Scottsdale Road in East Camelback like it already knew wealthy people would enter before they did. Valet lights glowed against polished Block marble. A fountain rolled softly near the entrance. Inside, low jazz floated through the dining room beneath gold pendant lighting and dark walnut walls. Everything smelled expensive. Oak smoke from grilled steaks, leather boots, old bourbon. Brooke checked herself in the passenger mirror before getting out of the Audi. "Please let me handle most of the conversation tonight," she said. Sean shut the truck door beside her. "You already said that." "I'm serious." "So am I." Brooke sighed quietly and started toward the entrance in black heels, sharp enough to sound like tiny hammers against the pavement. Sean followed a few steps behind. He wore dark jeans, clean boots, and a charcoal button-up shirt Brooke had purchased 6 months earlier because she said his old clothes made him look temporary. Inside, the hostess led them toward a private corner booth already occupied by 4 people. Trevor Hale sat nearest the center. 38, artificial smile, tech startup founder. The type of man who wore white sneakers with tailored suits and constantly touched his watch while speaking. Beside him sat Lindsay Carr, a luxury realtor whose social media page looked like a travel magazine sponsored by champagne companies. Claire Whitmore sat across from them. Unlike the others, Claire didn't immediately start talking when Sean and Brooke approached. She simply looked up from her wine glass and observed quietly. Brooke's smile changed the second she reached the table. Brighter, sharper, professional. "Sorry we're late," she said. Traffic near Paradise Valley was awful. Trevor stood and shook Sean's hand. "Good to finally meet you, man." "Likewise." Trevor's grip tightened slightly, testing. Sean barely reacted. Everyone sat. Menus opened. Drinks arrived. Within minutes, the conversation moved exactly where Sean expected it would. Money, vacation homes, investments. Trevor talked about a new AI-driven property analytics platform his startup was building. Lindsay mentioned a client purchasing a second home in Aspen for cash. Brooke leaned forward during those conversations with visible energy, nodding quickly, laughing at the right moments, adding details when she thought they made her sound important. Sean mostly listened, not because he felt intimidated, because people revealed themselves faster when they thought nobody serious was paying attention. Trevor interrupted the waiter halfway through describing specials. "Actually, what's the Wagyu situation tonight?" Lindsay asked for imported sparkling water from Italy. Brooke ordered Chilean sea bass. Sean ordered the 12-ounce ribeye and iced tea. Trevor smiled slightly, keeping it simple. "Usually works out better," Sean replied. A small silence followed. Claire noticed it. Her eyes shifted between Sean and Brooke for less than a second. Then Brooke laughed lightly. "Sean's pretty low maintenance," she said. "Honestly, if he has air conditioning and a sandwich, he's happy. Everyone chuckled politely. Sean cut into a piece of bread without reacting. Brooke kept going. He still fixes things himself. Last month, he spent an entire Saturday repairing our washing machine because he didn't want to hire someone. Lindsay laughed harder this time. No offense, she said, but that sounds miserable. It was, Brooke replied immediately. More laughter. Sean reached for his water glass. The condensation felt cold against his fingertips. Trevor leaned back in the booth. So what exactly do you do? Sean Brooke answered before he could. HVAC repair, she said. Basically, Arizona Survival Services. Trevor nodded with exaggerated seriousness. Honestly, probably recession-proof. People like cold air? Sean said calmly. That they do, Trevor replied. Then Brooke added the sentence that shifted the table slightly. He's basically married to air conditioners. Another round of laughter. Not cruel enough to sound shocking, just dismissive enough to sting. Claire didn't laugh immediately this time. She picked up her wine instead. Sean noticed. Dinner continued. Steaks arrived on black iron plates, still sizzling. The lighting dimmed lower as evening crowds filled the restaurant. Glasses clinked. Servers moved silently between tables, carrying trays of wine worth more than Sean's monthly truck payment. Trevor began talking about status memberships at Whisper Rock Golf Club. Lindsay discussed private schools. Brooke joined every topic eagerly. Every sentence sounded slightly rehearsed, as if she had practiced becoming this version of herself for years. Then Trevor glanced toward Sean again. So what do you do for fun outside work? Before Sean answered, Brooke smirked. Oh, he reorganizes toolboxes. The table laughed harder than before. Even Trevor nearly choked on bourbon. Sean smiled faintly. Only the badly organized ones. Brooke shook her head. You see what I deal with? Lindsay wiped tears from laughing. I mean, at least he's dependable. Brooke raised her wine glass. Oh, absolutely. Broke and pathetic sometimes, but dependable. The sentence landed differently than the others. Sharper. Cleaner. Like she had said it before. For the first time all evening, silence lingered too long at the table. Trevor looked down at his drink. Lindsay stared toward the bar. Claire slowly lowered her wine glass. Sean looked directly at Brooke. Not angry, not embarrassed, just still. Brooke seemed to realize half a second too late that she had crossed some invisible line, but instead of correcting herself, she forced another laugh. You know I'm kidding. Sean nodded once. Of course. Then he returned to cutting his steak. Claire watched him carefully after that. Not with pity, with concentration, as if something about him no longer matched the picture Brooke had painted. 20 minutes later, dessert menus arrived. Trevor started discussing an upcoming acquisition rumor involving several marketing agencies in Arizona. West Frame Creative came up briefly. Claire spoke for the first time in nearly 10 minutes. Acquisition talks are getting aggressive lately. Trevor shrugged. That's business. Claire's eyes moved toward Sean. Depends who's buying. Something flickered across Sean's expression too quickly for most people to notice. But Claire noticed. Then she noticed something else. The last name. Richardson. Not uncommon, but familiar. Very familiar. She had seen it somewhere recently. Not in Brooke's stories, not at company parties, in documents, financial documents. Claire leaned back slowly while Trevor kept talking about venture capital firms. Her mind searched through memory. 3 days earlier, she had reviewed preliminary acquisition paperwork sent through West Frame's legal department. One ownership structure had stood out because it was unusually private. Richardson Industrial Group, managed through layered trusts, almost no public photographs, almost no interviews, just numbers, warehouses, commercial holdings, distribution centers across Arizona and Nevada. Claire's stomach tightened slightly. She looked again at Sean's watch. Steel. Simple, but expensive. Not flashy expensive, quiet expensive. Then she remembered another detail. During dinner, Sean never once tried to impress anyone. Men desperate for status always talk too much around wealth. Sean barely talked at all. Claire suddenly stopped hearing the conversation around her. The restaurant noise faded into background static. Brooke kept speaking beside her, laughing again, touching her wine glass with manicured fingers, completely unaware. Claire studied Sean carefully now. The posture, the patience, the way he observed before responding. Her pulse quickened. No. Impossible. But the feeling remained. Then Trevor asked Sean casually, "So, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Brooke laughed before he answered. Probably still carrying compressors in 100-degree weather. Sean dabbed his mouth with a napkin. Then he looked at Trevor, hopefully somewhere quieter. Claire felt cold suddenly, because she knew exactly where she had seen that answer before. In an investor profile summary attached to confidential acquisition documents. Minimalist, private, direct. She stared at Sean while the others kept eating. And for the first time that night, Claire Whitmore became deeply uncomfortable sitting at that table. The drive back to Phoenix took 43 minutes. Brooke spent 36 of them talking. The Audi moved south along Loop 101 beneath streams of white headlights and glowing billboards, advertising luxury condos, cosmetic surgery clinics, and private wealth management firms. Scottsdale glittered at night in a way Phoenix never tried to. Brooke liked that. She adjusted the air vent toward herself and kicked off her heels near the passenger floorboard. "You could have at least tried tonight," she said. Sean kept both hands on the steering wheel. "I showed up. That's not what I mean." Outside, the windshield traffic thinned near Tempe. Sean said nothing. Brooke leaned back against the seat. "You barely spoke. You asked me not to." "That's not..." She stopped herself with visible irritation. "God..." "Sean, you know what I mean." He glanced briefly toward her. "No, I don't think I do." Brooke crossed her arms. The wine had faded enough now for sharpness to replace looseness in her voice. "These people matter around the company." "You said that already." "Because it's true." Sean drove another half-mile in silence. Streetlights rolled across the dashboard in slow intervals. Finally, Brooke sighed dramatically. "Trevor probably thinks you hate him." "I don't know, Trevor. You don't know anyone because you don't even try." That sentence stayed inside the truck for several seconds after she said it. Sean's jaw tightened once. Only once. He kept his eyes on the road. Brooke continued, "You sit there looking miserable while everyone else is networking and building relationships. Dinner isn't networking. For you, maybe." The words came faster now, more honest. That happened sometimes when people got tired enough to stop editing themselves. Brooke stared out the passenger window toward passing lights. "I work too hard to look like..." She stopped. Sean finished it for her quietly. Like what Brooke hesitated. The silence answered before she did. Then came the sentence anyway. Like, I married someone with no ambition. The Audi cabin became very still. No music, no traffic noise loud enough to interrupt the moment. Just the soft hum of tires against asphalt. Sean loosened one hand from the wheel and rested it near the center console. When exactly did you decide that about me? Brooke laughed softly through her nose. Come on, Sean. No. I'm asking. You fix air conditioners. I know what I do. Brooke turned toward him now. You know what I mean. Look around us. Everyone tonight owns something, builds something. They're moving forward. Sean almost smiled at that. Almost. But the expression disappeared before it fully formed. Outside downtown Phoenix rose ahead in scattered towers and blinking red aircraft lights. Brooke kept going. And honestly, sometimes it feels like you stopped trying years ago. Sean finally looked at her directly for the first time since leaving Scottsdale. Stop trying at what? At life. The words landed cleanly. No hesitation, no apology afterward. Brooke realized too late how harsh they sounded, but pride kept her from pulling them back. Sean returned his eyes to the road. His face changed very little. That was always the difficult thing about him. He absorbed impact quietly. No shouting, no slammed fists, no dramatic reactions people could point to later. Just silence, controlled silence. And somehow, that silence always felt heavier than anger. They exited onto Cave Creek Road. Brooke checked her phone. Notifications flashed across her screen from coworkers still texting about dinner. Trevor had apparently sent a joke into the group chat. Lindsay reacted with laughing emojis. Claire Whitmore had not replied at all. Brooke frowned briefly at that. Then she looked towards Sean again. You embarrassed me tonight. That sentence finally made him speak without delay. How you don't fit in with those people. There it was. Not hidden anymore. Not softened. Direct. Sean nodded once slowly, as if confirming something internally. Then he asked the question carefully. Do you actually believe what you said back there? Brooke looked confused. At dinner. The truck stopped at a red light. Neon from a 24-hour pharmacy reflected across the windshield. Brooke looked away first. You know I was joking. That's not what I asked. She shifted impatiently in her seat. Oh my God, Sean! The light turned green. He drove forward. Brooke rubbed her forehead. And you take everything so personally. I'm asking one question. Another silence. Then Brooke finally answered. I think you could have done more with your life. Sean nodded again. Not wounded. Not surprised. Just quiet. The truck entered their neighborhood 10 minutes later. Small homes. Desert landscaping. Dim porch lights. Nothing gated. Nothing flashy. Brooke grabbed her heels and purse before the truck fully stopped in the driveway. You're doing that thing again, she muttered. What thing? Acting like I'm some terrible person? Because I want more. Sean shut off the engine. I didn't say that. You don't have to. Brooke stepped out and walked toward the house without waiting for him. The front door opened, closed. Silence returned. Sean remained in the truck another minute. His hands rested loosely against the steering wheel while the dashboard lights dimmed automatically around him. Across the street, a sprinkler system ticked softly over dry grass. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The neighborhood looked exactly the same as it had the night before. But something inside the marriage had shifted permanently during that drive. Not broken, clarified. Sean finally stepped out and entered the garage. Brooks' Audi sat spotless beneath recessed lighting. His old Ford carried streaks of dust and dried mud along the lower panels. The contrast almost looked symbolic now. Inside the kitchen, Brooke poured herself another glass of wine without asking if he wanted anything. Sean opened the refrigerator instead. Cold air spilled across his face. He grabbed a bottle of water. Brooke stood near the island counter, scrolling through Instagram while sipping wine. Perfect posture. Perfect makeup still intact, as if the evening had cost her nothing. Sean watched her quietly for a moment. Then he spoke. "You really think I'm pathetic?" Brooke looked up immediately. Annoyance flashed across her face. "Can we not do this tonight? It's a simple question." "You're twisting words." "No, I'm repeating them." Brooke set the wine glass down harder than necessary. "I think you've gotten comfortable being average." That one stayed. Sean felt it settle somewhere deep and cold inside him. Not because he believed her, because she did. He realized that completely now. Brooke genuinely saw him as a small man, a man she had socially outgrown, and somehow that hurt more than the public humiliation itself. Sean unscrewed the water bottle cap slowly. Then he walked past her toward the hallway. "Where are you going?" Brooke asked. "Bed. It's barely 10. I've got work tomorrow." She laughed once under her breath. "Of course you do." Sean stopped halfway down the hallway. For a second, Brooke thought he might finally argue. Finally explode. Finally defend himself. Instead, he turned slightly and asked in a calm voice, "Do you know what's interesting?" Brooke crossed her arms. "What?" "You stopped respecting me long before you stopped loving me." The sentence hit harder because he said it gently. Brooke opened her mouth. Nothing came out immediately. Sean continued walking. Upstairs, he entered the small office beside the guest bedroom instead of going directly to bed. The room was simple. Metal filing cabinet, old leather chair, desk lamp, a ThinkPad laptop that looked 10 years outdated. Sean closed the door quietly behind him and sat down. Then he opened the laptop. The screen illuminated his face in pale blue light. Password. Two-factor authentication. Another password. The desktop appeared. Not HVAC schedules. Not repair invoices. Corporate dashboards. Asset reports. Warehouse occupancy metrics. Shipping contracts. At the center of the screen sat the logo for Richardson Industrial Group. Sean leaned back silently. Then a new email notification appeared in the corner of the monitor. From Caldwell, Pierce and Rowe, subject West Frame acquisition meeting. Final confirmation scheduled, 8 a.m. location. Camelback Tower, Scottsdale. Sean stared at the email for several seconds. Downstairs, he could faintly hear Brooke laughing at something on her phone. Upstairs, Sean clicked confirm attendance. Sean Richardson bought his first warehouse in October of 2009. The building sat west of Interstate 17 near an abandoned distribution corridor outside Phoenix. Broken windows, rusted loading docks, graffiti sprayed across concrete walls. The previous owner lost it during the financial collapse, and the bank wanted it gone fast. Purchase price $380,000. Everyone told Sean it was a stupid investment. The roof leaked. Copper wiring had been stripped out. The property sat empty for almost 2 years. But Sean understood something most investors didn't back then. People always needed movement. Goods, refrigerated food, medical supplies, freight. The economy changed, delivery systems changed, but movement never stopped. So while other investors chased luxury condos and flashy office towers, Sean bought industrial space nobody wanted. Then he waited. That became the foundation of Richardson Industrial Group. Not explosive growth, not headlines, patience. By 2012, he owned 3 warehouses. By 2016, he controlled cold storage facilities across Arizona and Nevada. By 2021, logistics demand exploded nationwide. Suddenly, companies needed distribution centers near Phoenix, Tempe, and Las Vegas immediately. Sean already owned them. Most people still had no idea who he was. That part was intentional. At 6:05 the next morning, Sean sat alone in the office beside the guest bedroom, reviewing acquisition reports, while dawn light crept through the blinds. The house remained quiet upstairs. Brooke was still asleep. On the laptop screen, financial summaries from West Frame Creative filled multiple windows. Revenue decline, inflated vendor expenses, client retention instability, cash flow irregularities, hidden beneath aggressive growth projections. West Frame looked polished from the outside. Inside it was bleeding. Sean took a slow sip of coffee while scrolling through another report prepared by Caldwell Pierce and Rowe. The law firm had represented Richardson Industrial Group for nearly a decade. They handled acquisitions trusts, litigation, privacy structures. Expensive attorneys, extremely discreet. Sean trusted exactly 3 people inside the firm. One of them had sent a private note at 4:42 a.m. Potential internal fraud indicators confirmed. More discussion recommended before acquisition closes. Sean read the sentence twice. Then he opened the attached spreadsheet. Vendor payments, marketing reimbursements, consulting invoices. Some numbers didn't make sense. A recurring media vendor called Copper Ridge Strategies had billed West Frame nearly $400,000 over 18 months. No substantial deliverables attached. No real staffing records. Possible shell structure. Sean leaned back slowly. Then he saw another name attached repeatedly to approval chains. Brooke Richardson. His expression barely changed, but his eyes stopped moving across the screen for several seconds. Downstairs, the coffee maker clicked softly as it finished brewing another pot. At 6:31, Sean closed the laptop and stood. The kitchen windows glowed pale orange from the sunrise now stretching over Phoenix rooftops. He poured fresh coffee into a travel mug while Brooke finally entered the kitchen wearing silk pajamas and holding her phone. She looked tired, not guilty, not reflective about the night before, just irritated. "Why are you up so early?" she asked. "Meeting with repair clients." Something like that. Brooke opened the refrigerator. "You're still doing the silent treatment." Sean screwed the lid onto the coffee mug. "I'm going to Scottsdale first." She looked over briefly. "Try not to embarrass yourself around rich people today." The sentence came casually. Automatic, as if cruelty had become part of her normal conversational rhythm. Sean picked up his keys. "You heading to West Frame afterward?" Brooke asked. "Maybe." She nodded absently. Then she frowned slightly. "Actually, Claire's acting weird this morning." Sean paused. "How?" "She barely texted back after dinner." He said nothing. Brooke shrugged. She's probably stressed about acquisition talks. Sean walked toward the garage. Behind him, Brooke called out, "And please don't park that truck in front of the building if you stop by." He closed the door without answering. Outside, morning heat already shimmered above the pavement. Sean drove the Ford south through Phoenix, while business radio played quietly through old speakers. Traffic thickened approaching downtown Scottsdale. Glass towers reflected sunlight hard enough to hurt the eyes. Camelback Tower rose above the surrounding buildings in mirrored steel and blue-tinted glass. 42 floors. Private executive parking underground. Valet entrance lined with stone planters and security cameras. Sean parked in the lower garage beside a black Mercedes S-Class and turned off the engine. For a moment, he remained still inside the truck. Construction dust coated the dashboard. There was a tear in the driver's seat, stitching near his left hip. Anyone seeing the vehicle would assume exactly what Brooke assumed. Small life, small money, small man. Sean grabbed a leather portfolio from the passenger seat and stepped out. Upstairs, the lobby smelled faintly of polished marble and expensive cologne. Men in tailored suits crossed the floor carrying coffee and phones. Women in heels moved quickly toward elevators, while digital market numbers rolled silently across large wall displays. Nobody paid attention to Sean initially, just another maintenance worker. Then the receptionist looked up. Her posture changed immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Richardson." Several nearby heads turned subtly. Sean nodded once. "Morning, Dana." She handed him a temporary executive access card. "Conference room 38 is ready. Mr. Calloway and legal arrived 10 minutes ago." "Thank you." The elevator ride to the 38th floor took less than a minute. Inside the mirrored walls, Sean adjusted his cuff once. No designer suit, no flashy watch, dark navy dress shirt, gray slacks, simple steel watch, clean shave. That was enough. The elevator doors opened directly into a private executive corridor lined with dark walnut panels and silent carpeting. At the far end sat the acquisition conference room. Two attorneys stood near the entrance speaking quietly. Both stopped immediately when Sean approached. "Morning, Sean," one of them said. "Morning." Inside, financial documents covered the long glass table. Multiple screens displayed West Frame's corporate structure, debt exposure, client retention graphs, and acquisition projections. Sean placed his portfolio near the head chair. Then he looked through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Scottsdale. Thousands of people moved below without knowing their company futures would be decided inside this room today. That part always fascinated Sean, how fragile entire careers looked from high enough above. At exactly 7:58 a.m., the conference room doors opened again. Claire Whitmore entered carrying a laptop and several folders against her chest. Dark green blazer, hair tied back tightly, professional, focused. Then she looked up and stopped walking. The color shifted slightly from her face almost immediately. Not dramatic, just enough. Her eyes moved from Sean to the head chair, to the acquisition documents already waiting in front of him. Recognition arrived all at once. Sean watched her carefully. Claire recovered faster than most people would have, but not completely. One folder slipped slightly in her grip before she corrected it. The room stayed silent. Then Claire spoke carefully. "Mr. Richardson," not Sean, not confusion, not a question, recognition. One of the attorneys glanced between them briefly. Claire stepped farther into the room. Now she noticed the Richardson Industrial Group logo displayed across the presentation screen behind him. The final confirmation. Last night, replayed visibly behind her eyes. Brooke laughing, the table laughing with her, broke and pathetic. Claire swallowed once, then straightened her posture immediately, professional instincts taking over. "Good morning, sir," she said. Sean nodded politely toward the seat across from him. "Morning, Claire." Outside the conference room windows, Scottsdale traffic continued moving normally beneath the Arizona sun. Inside the room, the balance of power had already shifted completely. Claire understood that now. The terrifying part was that Brooke still didn't. The room stayed quiet for 3 full seconds after Claire Whitmore said, "Good morning, sir." Not awkward quiet, controlled quiet, the kind that forms when everyone suddenly realizes they misunderstood the hierarchy in the room. Sean pulled out the chair at the head of the conference table and sat down without urgency. He placed his leather portfolio beside a stack of acquisition documents while attorneys from Caldwell Pearson Rowe resumed organizing paperwork near the projector screens. Claire sat carefully across from him. Her movements looked precise now, measured. Last night at Blackstone Prime, she had laughed politely when Brooke mocked Sean's work boots and old truck. Not enthusiastically, not cruelly, but she had still participated in the atmosphere. This morning, the atmosphere was gone, replaced by numbers, ownership percentages, liabilities, decision-making authority. Those things changed how people spoke. A senior attorney named Marcus Calloway adjusted his glasses and addressed the room. "We'll begin once the remaining West Frame executives arrive." Sean nodded once. No speech, no introduction, no attempt to establish dominance. He didn't need to. Claire opened her laptop, but Sean noticed her fingers pause briefly above the keyboard. Still unsettled. Not because Sean had hidden money, because he had hidden restraint. Men with wealth usually advertised it. Watches, cars, stories, restaurants. Sean had walked into a room full of people insulting him and never once corrected them. Claire could not stop thinking about that. At 8:04 a.m., the conference room doors opened again. 3 West Frame executives entered carrying tablets and legal folders. CEO Martin Feld. Operations Director Sheila Moreno. Senior Accounts Executive Ryan Beckett. Each greeted Sean immediately. "Mr. Richardson." "Morning, Sean. Good to finally meet you in person." No hesitation, no confusion. Claire watched the realization spread across the room's social dynamics like ink through water. Everyone here already knew exactly who Sean Richardson was. Everyone except Brooke. That detail sat heavily in Claire's stomach. Martin Feld took a seat beside her and lowered his voice. "You okay?" Claire kept her eyes on the table. "Fine. You look pale." She ignored the comment. At 8:07, Marcus Calloway dimmed the lights slightly and activated the main presentation screen. The Richardson Industrial Group logo appeared first. Simple black lettering. No slogan. No flashy branding. Then the acquisition summary loaded underneath. West Frame Creative Final Review. Sean folded his hands calmly. "Let's begin." His voice sounded exactly the same as it had at dinner. Steady, low, controlled. That almost made the situation stranger. Martin cleared his throat. "We appreciate the opportunity to move this process forward." Sean nodded politely. "Then let's keep it efficient." Claire glanced sideways toward him. No ego, no revenge performance, no dramatic reveal, just business. Marcus switched slides. Financial summaries appeared across the screen. Revenue growth, client retention, operational debt. Then came the internal audit section. The room temperature suddenly felt colder. We identified several inconsistencies during preliminary review, Marcus said, primarily involving vendor billing and reimbursement chains. Ryan Beckett shifted in his chair. Martin frowned immediately. What kind of inconsistencies? Marcus clicked another slide. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Vendor names, invoice totals, payment authorizations, some entries highlighted red. Claire recognized the numbers instantly. Her stomach tightened. Copper Ridge Strategies. Again. Marcus continued calmly. Several vendors billed Westframe for services lacking supporting deliverables or verifiable staffing records. Sean finally spoke. How long has Copper Ridge been active? Claire answered automatically. Approximately 18 months. Sean looked toward her. Total paid. Claire swallowed once before answering. 392,000. The room became very still again. Martin looked confused now. I thought Copper Ridge handled digital outreach. Claire kept her eyes on the screen. They were listed that way. Where Claire hesitated. Sean noticed immediately, meaning Claire exhaled carefully. We haven't confirmed operational legitimacy yet. Ryan leaned forward suddenly. Wait, are you saying the vendor might be fake? Nobody answered immediately. Marcus clicked another slide. Approval chains appeared. Names attached to payment authorizations. Claire watched Martin's expression shift from confusion to concern. Then Sean saw it too, repeated across multiple approvals. Brooke Richardson. The name sat there plainly beneath transaction histories. No emotion attached, just records. That was the frightening thing about evidence. It didn't yell. It didn't exaggerate. It simply existed. Martin looked toward Claire sharply. Why wasn't this escalated earlier? Claire answered honestly. We only identified the pattern during acquisition preparation. Ryan cursed under his breath. Sean remained motionless at the head of the table. Not angry, not surprised, just attentive. That unsettled Claire more than anything else. Most husbands would have exploded seeing their spouse connected to possible fraud. Sean looked like a man reviewing damaged inventory. Professional, detached, methodical. Marcus continued. We're not assigning intent at this stage, but the reimbursement structure requires full forensic audit before acquisition completion. Martin rubbed both hands across his face. Oh, Jesus. Another slide appeared. Expense duplication, vendor overlap, consulting charges routed through secondary billing entities. Claire noticed Sean watching the room more than the screen now, studying reactions, measuring stress, determining who already knew. That observation skill suddenly explained everything about him. The silence, the restraint, the years of underestimating him. He had spent his life letting people reveal themselves first. Martin finally looked directly at Sean. What happens now? Sean answered immediately. We continue the acquisition review. That's it. For now. Ryan stared at him. You're remarkably calm about this. Sean met his eyes evenly. Emotional decisions are expensive. Nobody spoke after that. Claire lowered her gaze toward her laptop screen again, pretending to review spreadsheets while her thoughts raced elsewhere. Brooke. Last night's dinner. The laughing. The phrase pathetic. Claire suddenly understood something humiliating. Brooke had spent years believing she held social power over Sean because she occupied rooms like this one. But Sean owned the rooms, not socially, literally. At 8:41, Marcus distributed printed audit requests across the table, departmental financial reviews, vendor validation procedures, communication preservation notices, legal compliance instructions. Claire scanned the pages quickly. Then she saw another detail. Marketing Division Audit Priority. Lead approval. Contact Brooke Richardson. A pulse flickered visibly near Claire's jaw. Sean noticed again. Problem? He asked. Claire looked up immediately. No, sir. That word again. Sir. Not performative now. Instinctive. Sean leaned back slightly in his chair. How close do you work with Brooke? Operationally. The room shifted subtly. Martin looked uncomfortable. Claire answered carefully. Daily. And she manages campaign approvals and vendor coordination. Would she have authority to bypass accounting review? Claire hesitated too long. That was answer enough. Martin cursed quietly. Ryan leaned back in disbelief. Sean simply nodded once. Then he spoke the sentence that changed the direction of the entire meeting. I want a complete audit of every vendor attached to Brooke Richardson's department within 48 hours. Nobody objected. Nobody even tried. Marcus wrote the instruction down immediately. Claire's pulse climbed higher. Because she understood something Brooke still didn't. This was no longer office politics, no longer marriage tension, no longer social embarrassment. This had entered systems, legal systems, financial systems, documentation systems, and systems didn't care. Who laughed at dinner the night before? At 8:58, the conference room doors opened briefly again. An assistant stepped inside carrying coffee trays. Ms. Richardson just arrived downstairs for the 9 o'clock leadership briefing, she said. Claire froze. Martin looked toward Sean instinctively. Sean's expression never changed. Thank you, he said calmly. The assistant left. Silence followed again. Then Sean picked up his pen and signed the preliminary audit authorization papers without hesitation. Ink scratched softly across the document. Marcus collected the signed pages immediately. Claire stared at the signature for half a second longer than necessary, because somewhere downstairs, Brooke Richardson still believed her husband was a tired HVAC repairman embarrassed by wealthy people. Up here on the 38th floor, Sean Richardson had just authorized a forensic investigation into her entire department, and Brooke was walking into the building completely unaware. Brooke Richardson entered Camelback Tower at 9:03 a.m. carrying a leather tote bag and an iced matcha latte from the cafe across the street. She wore a cream-colored blazer, gold jewelry, and heels sharp enough to echo across the marble lobby floor. Her reflection followed her through the glass entrance doors like a polished advertisement for success. The receptionist greeted her immediately. Morning, Brooke? Morning. Brooke adjusted her sunglasses onto the top of her head while checking notifications on her phone. 2 unread messages from Lindsay, 1 from Trevor, nothing from Claire. That still bothered her slightly. The elevator ride to West Frame's offices on the 36th floor took less than a minute. Inside, several employees stood unusually close together near the reception area, whispering in low voices. The conversation stopped when Brooke stepped out. That caught her attention immediately. She lowered her sunglasses. What's going on? Nobody answered fast enough. Then a junior accounts manager Named Paige forced a smile. Big acquisition meeting upstairs. Brooke frowned. Yeah, I know. Paige nodded too quickly. Apparently, the buyer's already here. Brooke started walking toward her office. Okay. Another silence followed behind her. Brooke noticed it. Something in the atmosphere felt wrong. Not dramatic, just tense. Like everyone suddenly cared about posture and wording. Her office overlooked Scottsdale Road through floor-to-ceiling windows. Normally the view relaxed her. This morning it didn't. She dropped her bag onto the desk and opened her laptop. 37 unread emails. 3 marked urgent. 1 from accounting, another from legal. Then she saw the subject line that made her stomach tighten slightly. Notice of financial review request. Brooke clicked immediately. The email was formal, cold, generated through legal compliance channels. All marketing vendor contracts approved under her department during the past 24 months were being reviewed for audit verification. Supporting documentation required immediately. Brooke stared at the screen, then laughed softly once under her breath. Jesus Christ. Corporate acquisitions always created paperwork chaos. Probably nothing. Still, her pulse climbed slightly as she skimmed the attached vendor list. Copper Ridge Strategies, Blue Mesa Consulting, Harlow Digital Outreach. 3 vendors she personally approved. Her office door opened suddenly. Claire Whitmore stepped inside. Brooke looked up instantly. There you are, she said. Why are people acting weird this morning? Claire closed the door behind her carefully. For the first time since Brooke had known her, Claire looked genuinely unsettled. Brooke frowned. What happened? Claire took a breath. You need to be careful today. Brooke blinked once. What does that mean? Claire hesitated. That hesitation immediately irritated Brooke. Claire, the acquisition group arrived early. Okay. Claire looked directly at her now. Brooke, who exactly is your husband? The question landed strangely. Brooke laughed automatically. What, I'm serious. Brooke leaned back in her chair. He fixes HVAC systems. Why? Claire's expression didn't change. That's not all he does. A small pause formed between them. Brooke felt annoyance first, then confusion, then something colder. What are you talking about? Claire walked closer to the desk. The buyer. Brooke frowned harder. What buyer? Claire spoke quietly now. Richardson Industrial Group. Brooke stared at her blankly for 2 seconds. Then she laughed again. Okay. Same last name. Arizona's full of Richardsons. Claire didn't laugh. That was the moment Brooke's stomach tightened for real. He's Sean Richardson, Claire said carefully. Your husband. The room became silent. Outside the office, Glass employees moved through hallways carrying coffee and laptops, while phones rang in distant cubicles. Inside the office, Brooke's expression slowly lost color. No. Claire said nothing. That's impossible. He's upstairs right now. Brooke shook her head immediately. No, you're confused. I'm not. Brooke stood up so quickly her chair rolled backward. My husband drives a 12-year-old Ford truck. Claire crossed her arms. And he fixes air conditioners. Claire held Brooke's gaze. And he owns Richardson Industrial Group. Brooke stared at her, completely still now. The human mind rejected information sometimes when accepting it would force too many realities to collapse at once. This was one of those moments. Brooke laughed again, but weaker now. This isn't funny. I'm not joking. Brooke grabbed her phone instantly and opened Sean's contact. Call. Ringing. No answer. She called again immediately, straight to voicemail. A cold sensation spread slowly across her chest. Claire watched quietly. I saw him upstairs, she said. Head of the table. Brooke lowered the phone. No. He authorized a forensic audit. Brooke blinked. A what? Claire hesitated. Then she decided honesty was safer now than loyalty. They're reviewing vendor payments connected to your department. The words hit harder than the revelation about Sean. Brooke stepped backward slowly. What exactly are they looking at? Everything. Another silence. Then Brooke's expression changed. Fast. Not guilt. Exactly. Calculation. How much does he know? Claire noticed the wording immediately. Not, is something wrong? Not, there must be a mistake. How much does he know? Claire suddenly understood more than she wanted to. I don't know, Claire answered carefully. Brooke began pacing beside the windows. He can't do this, Claire almost responded before stopping herself. Can't legally, financially, structurally. He absolutely could. Brooke rubbed both hands across her temples. This is insane. Then another realization hit her. Dinner. Blackstone Prime. The jokes. The laughter. Her face lost more color. Claire watched it happen in real time. Brooke looked up sharply. You knew last night? No. But now you do. Claire nodded once. Brooke sat back down heavily. The office suddenly felt too small, too bright. Every detail from the marriage replayed differently now. The truck, the cheap clothes, the quietness, the refusal to impress anyone, the calm. Brooke had mistaken restraint for weakness, and now the realization arrived alongside something worse. Sean had listened to every insult while already knowing he was buying her company. Her phone vibrated suddenly. New email notification. Mandatory executive review. 10 a.m. Attendance required. Below it sat another line. Prepared by Richardson Industrial Group Acquisition Team. Brooke stared at the sender address for several seconds. Then she whispered quietly, "Oh my God." Claire remained near the office door. You should probably prepare. Brooke looked up sharply for what Claire didn't answer immediately, because she genuinely didn't know. That was the frightening part. Sean Richardson had shown no anger upstairs, no revenge speech, no emotional reaction, just process. And process was harder to survive. Brooke stood again. I need to talk to him. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. About what? Brooke ignored the question and grabbed her phone again. Another call. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. For the first time in years, Brooke felt something unfamiliar where Sean was concerned. Not irritation, not embarrassment, uncertainty. A soft knock interrupted the room. Paige opened the office door halfway. Brooke. They're ready for the executive briefing. Brooke looked toward Claire. Claire looked away first. That frightened Brooke even more. Because Claire Whitmore respected powerful people. And this morning, Claire was suddenly acting careful around Sean. Very careful. Brooke grabbed her blazer tighter around herself and walked out of the office toward the executive conference hallway. Employees stopped talking when she passed now. Some avoided eye contact completely. The corridor suddenly felt longer than usual. At the far end stood a glass conference room. Inside, several executives already sat around the table. Lawyers, financial analysts, Martin Feld. And at the head of the room, Sean, Dark navy shirt, calm expression, reviewing documents beneath the glow of overhead lights. Brooke stopped walking. For one suspended second, the entire hallway disappeared around her. Sean looked up slowly. Their eyes met through the conference room glass. Brooke forced a smile automatically. "Sean," he interrupted softly. "Not here." Then he returned to the documents in front of him, and Brooke understood finally that everyone in the building had just watched her lose control of the room she thought belonged to her. The executive conference room smelled faintly of coffee, printer toner, and expensive cologne. Brooke Richardson sat halfway down the table, trying not to look directly at Sean. That alone felt unnatural. For years, she had controlled every room they entered together simply by acting embarrassed enough on his behalf. Sean usually stayed quiet, observed. Let her lead conversations while he faded into the background. Now the background had disappeared, and Sean was sitting at the head of the table reviewing financial reports while attorneys waited for his decisions. Brooke kept telling herself there had to be some explanation. Maybe he inherited money recently. Maybe he was a minority partner. Maybe Claire misunderstood the ownership structure. But every passing minute made those explanations weaker, especially because nobody in the room treated Sean like an outsider. Martin Feld cleared his throat nervously. As everyone knows, Richardson Industrial Group is conducting a final operational review before acquisition completion. Sean turned one page calmly. No reaction, no dramatic speech. That calmness kept unsettling Brooke more than anger would have. A younger analyst distributed folders around the table. When one landed in front of Brooke, she immediately noticed the red compliance sticker attached near the corner. Audit Priority Review. Her pulse jumped. She opened the folder quickly. Vendor summaries, financial authorizations, internal expense chains, several highlighted entries already marked for investigation. Copper Ridge Strategies. Again. Brooke's throat tightened. Across the table, Sean spoke without looking directly at her. "We identified inconsistencies requiring immediate clarification." His voice remained steady, professional. The exact same voice he used ordering coffee or discussing broken compressors. Brooke suddenly remembered every time she mocked how boring he sounded. Now, the steadiness felt dangerous. Martin shifted uncomfortably. "We believe most of these issues are explainable." Sean finally looked up. "Good." One word, nothing emotional, attached to it. Brooke stared at him. How long had he known that question kept growing larger inside her head? Not just about the company, about everything. The truck, the house, the work shirts, the quietness, the sandwiches in parking lots. Had all of it been fake? No. That was the strange part. Brooke realized suddenly that Sean never lied about who he was. She simply never looked closely enough to ask questions. An attorney from Caldwell Pierce and Rowe adjusted his glasses. All communication records connected to flagged vendors will be preserved effective immediately. Brooke looked sharply toward him. "What does that mean exactly?" The attorney answered calmly. "It means deletion or modification of related communications would create legal exposure." The sentence sounded polite. It was not polite. Brooke folded her arms tightly. "This feels excessive." Sean responded immediately. "Missing funds are usually excessive." Silence followed. Brooke felt heat rising into her face. Not humiliation yet, pressure. She forced a controlled smile. "So we're treating accounting irregularities like criminal investigations now." Sean met her eyes directly for the first time since she entered the room. We're treating them like accounting irregularities. Nothing more, nothing less. That answer somehow felt colder than accusation, because Sean wasn't trying to hurt her. He was treating her exactly the same way he treated every operational problem. Objectively. Claire Whitmore sat quietly near the far side of the table, reviewing spreadsheets on her laptop. Brooke noticed Claire avoiding eye contact now. That angered her instantly. After years of friendship, Claire suddenly looked terrified of saying the wrong thing. The room continued moving through audit procedures, vendor verification timelines, departmental interviews, forensic accounting requests. Brooke heard the words without fully processing them. Her attention kept drifting back towards Sean. He looked completely different inside this environment. Not richer, more precise. Every sentence short, every question targeted. No wasted movement, no insecurity, no need for approval. Brooke realized something uncomfortable then. At dinner the night before, Sean had been the only person at the table not trying to impress anyone. Trevor bragged constantly. Lindsay performed sophistication. Even Brooke monitored every word and gesture. Sean simply existed. And somehow that confidence made sense now. Martin interrupted her thoughts suddenly. Brooke. She blinked. What? We need clarification on these campaign reimbursements. An analyst turned a screen toward her. Invoice chains filled the display. Dates, approvals, transfer records. One highlighted payment totaled $78,000. Brooke kept her expression neutral. That was a digital outreach campaign. For which client, Sean asked. She looked at the screen again. Silverline Resorts. Claire finally spoke quietly. There's no completed deliverable attached. Brooke turned sharply toward her. It was outsourced. To who, Sean asked. Copper Ridge. Another silence. Sean folded his hands together slowly. Do you know who owns Copper Ridge Strategies? Brooke hesitated. A consultant group. That wasn't the question. The room became painfully still. Brooke suddenly felt trapped between two realities. The personal one and the legal one. A husband could be manipulated emotionally. A corporate acquisition process could not. She tried another approach. Sean, can we maybe discuss this privately? His answer came immediately. No, not angry, not loud, just final. Several executives lowered their eyes toward the table. Brooke felt humiliation touch her for the first time. Last night, she had controlled the social atmosphere completely. This morning, she could barely control her breathing. Sean glanced toward Marcus Calloway. Proceed. Marcus nodded and continued. We'll require full access to department communications, vendor records, archived billing, and reimbursement approvals. Brooke interrupted again. You're acting like I stole something. Sean looked at her calmly. Did you? The question hit with brutal simplicity. Brooke opened her mouth, closed it again. Because outrage would sound dangerous now, too defensive. She shifted in her chair instead. This company trusted me for years. And now we're reviewing the records from those years, Sean replied. Claire lowered her eyes again. Brooke noticed. And suddenly, another realization hit her hard. Claire knew more than she was saying. The thought made Brooke's chest tighten. At 10:14 a.m., the meeting paused briefly while assistants refreshed coffee trays and distributed updated compliance packets. Brooke stood immediately. I need some air. Nobody stopped her. She walked quickly into the hallway outside the conference room. Her heels struck the polished floor sharply while her breathing accelerated. Glass walls surrounded the executive corridor. Everyone could see everyone. Brooke hated that suddenly. She pulled out her phone and called Sean again, even though he sat 20 feet away. Voicemail. Her hand trembled slightly now. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. 2 years earlier, Sean had once asked casually why she needed separate financial approval authority on certain campaign vendors. Brooke remembered laughing and telling him, "You wouldn't understand corporate structures." At the time, she enjoyed the superiority in that sentence. Now the memory made her stomach turn. The conference room doors opened behind her. Claire stepped out quietly. Brooke turned immediately. "What did you tell him?" Claire frowned. "What? How much did you tell Sean?" Claire looked genuinely stunned. "I didn't tell him anything." "You knew this morning. I found out this morning." Brooke studied her carefully. Claire looked nervous, but not deceptive. That frightened Brooke more. Because if Claire wasn't controlling the situation, then nobody was. Brooke lowered her voice. "Claire, is this bad?" Claire hesitated too long again. Finally, she answered carefully. "I think Sean already expected to find something." Brooke stared at her. How Claire looked back toward the conference room glass. People like him don't spend hundreds of millions without checking everything first. People like him. That phrase echoed painfully inside Brooke's head. Not repair guys, not embarrassing husbands. People like him. Inside the conference room, Sean remained seated at the head of the table reviewing another stack of audit documents. Calm, patient, focused. He never once looked toward the hallway searching for Brooke. Never once checked whether she was okay. And for the first time since their marriage began, Brooke realized something terrifying. Sean Richardson did not need her approval anymore. Maybe he never had. By Wednesday morning, the audit team had converted an entire corner of West Frame Creative into a temporary forensic review center. Conference Room B became legal. Conference Room C became financial recovery. 2 IT specialists from Richardson Industrial Group worked beside outside compliance analysts while cardboard archive boxes stacked higher along the walls every hour. The atmosphere inside the company changed fast, too fast for rumors to keep up. Employees stopped joking loudly in hallways. Slack channels became quieter. Managers closed office doors during conversations. Even the espresso machine near the creative department suddenly sounded too loud in the mornings. People sensed danger before they understood details. Sean Richardson arrived at 7:12 a.m. carrying the same leather portfolio and travel coffee mug he used every day. No entourage, no security, no executive performance. Yet employees straightened automatically when he walked through the office now. Not because he demanded attention, because he didn't. Quiet authority always unsettled people more. Claire Whitmore already sat inside the financial review room reviewing vendor spreadsheets when Sean entered. "Morning," he said. Claire looked up immediately. "Morning, sir." He nodded once and placed several printed reports onto the table between them. Outside the glass walls, analysts moved quickly between offices carrying laptops and storage drives. Claire studied Sean carefully while he reviewed transaction summaries. No visible anger, no satisfaction, no revenge, just concentration. That bothered her more every hour because Brooke still believed emotional explanations could solve this situation. But Sean had already moved beyond emotion. He was building structure, systems, documentation. At 7:24, one of the IT specialists approached carrying a tablet. We recovered archived Slack messages from the marketing servers. Sean looked up. Anything relevant? The specialist hesitated. Yes. He handed over the tablet. Claire watched Sean scroll silently through internal conversations attached to vendor approvals. Then she saw it. One message highlighted in yellow. Brooke, route the invoice through Copper Ridge first. Don't attach campaign notes this time. Another. Brooke, we'll clean reporting before quarter review. Claire felt her stomach sink lower. Sean kept scrolling. No visible reaction. But Claire noticed one detail. His left thumb stopped moving briefly against the screen each time Brooke's name appeared. That tiny pause was the only sign anything affected him personally. Who else had approval access, Sean asked. Claire answered carefully. Mostly Brooke and senior campaign leadership. Names. Claire listed them. Ryan Beckett, Dana Ellis, 2 regional marketing coordinators. Sean nodded. Preserve all communication records immediately. The IT specialist left. Claire folded her hands together tightly. You think Brooke knew exactly what was happening? Sean looked at another message before answering. I think records usually tell the truth faster than people do. Claire stayed quiet after that. At 8:03, Brooke entered the financial review area without knocking. Everyone looked up instantly. She wore another sharp blazer today, but the polished confidence from earlier in the week had disappeared around the edges. Her makeup remained flawless. Her posture did not. She looked tired, angry, and frightened. Her eyes found Sean immediately. We need to talk. Sean continued reviewing the tablet. You can speak here. Brooke glanced toward the analyst nearby. I said privately, no. The answer came calmly. That calmness visibly frustrated her now. Brooke stepped closer to the table. You're humiliating me. Sean finally looked up. You did that yourself. The room went silent again. Analysts pretended to keep working while clearly listening. Brooke lowered her voice sharply. You're acting like I committed a crime. You routed company funds through unverifiable vendors. That doesn't mean, Sean interrupted quietly. Then explain it. Brooke opened her mouth. Nothing came out immediately, because explanations required specifics now, and specifics became dangerous. Claire watched the exchange carefully. Brooke still approached Sean emotionally, like a husband she could pressure into softness. But Sean sat there like an acquisition chairman, reviewing operational damage. Different language entirely. Brooke changed direction. Why didn't you tell me who you really were? Claire looked down instantly. Bad question. Sean answered anyway. You never asked. That's not fair. No. Brooke crossed her arms tightly. You let me believe. I let you believe what you wanted. That sentence hit harder than shouting would have, because Brooke knew instantly it was true. Sean never claimed to be poor, never lied about money, never invented fake backgrounds. He simply lived quietly. And Brooke filled the silence with assumptions. One of the analysts entered another stack of invoice records into the system nearby. The clicking keyboard sounds filled the room awkwardly. Brooke looked around, suddenly aware of the audience. This shouldn't be happening in front of employees. Sean turned another page in the report. Neither should fraud. Brooke's face flushed immediately. Claire saw it. Fear now. Real fear. Brooke stepped closer to Sean's chair. You think you're better than me Because you have money? Finally, Sean looked directly at her, and for the first time since the process began, Claire saw visible disappointment cross his face. Not rage, not superiority, disappointment. You mocked people for not having money, Sean said quietly. Not me. The sentence stayed suspended in the room because nobody could deny it. Not Claire, not the analysts, not Brooke herself. Sean leaned back slightly in his chair. You spent years deciding who mattered based on appearance. Brooke shook her head immediately. That's not true. You hid our marriage at company events. I was protecting my career. You laughed at me in front of strangers. Brooke looked away. And there it was. Not denial. Recognition. Sean continued calmly. You thought being seen with a repairman lowered your value. The room felt painfully small now. Claire focused on her laptop screen, pretending to review spreadsheets while every word landed heavily anyway. Brooke lowered her voice. I didn't know. No, Sean agreed. You didn't. A long silence followed. Then Sean picked up another report folder. We're done discussing our marriage here. Brooke stared at him. Just stared. Because the power dynamic between them had reversed so completely, it no longer felt recognizable. For years, Sean absorbed embarrassment quietly while Brooke controlled social perception. Now perception no longer mattered. Records mattered. And records could not be charmed. At 9:17, another IIT analyst approached quickly, carrying printed communication logs. Additional email recoveries, he said. Sean accepted the folder. Claire noticed Brooke tense immediately. Sean opened the file. Dozens of internal emails appeared. Expense discussions, vendor coordination, budget rerouting. Then one line caught his attention. Brooke used Sean's credit profile if necessary. He never checks financial paperwork closely anyway. The room suddenly felt colder. Claire looked away immediately. Even Brooke stopped breathing for a second. Sean read the sentence twice. Slowly. Then he closed the folder. No explosion, no raised voice. That somehow made it worse. Brooke stepped forward quickly. That's not what it sounds like. Sean looked at her calmly. What does it sound like? She struggled immediately. It was temporary. How much? Brooke hesitated again. Wrong move. Sean repeated the question. How much? 80,000? One analyst stopped typing. Claire closed her eyes briefly. Brooke rushed forward verbally now. I paid most of it back. It was a business bridge loan. In my name. You would have approved it if I asked. The sentence escaped too fast. And Brooke realized instantly how bad it sounded. Sean leaned back slowly in his chair. For the first time all morning, his expression hardened slightly. Not dramatic, just colder. You forged financial trust because you assumed I was too stupid to notice. Brooke looked genuinely shaken now. That's not what I meant. No, Sean replied quietly. It's exactly what you meant. Silence spread across the room again. Outside the glass walls, employees moved through the office, pretending not to stare inside. Inside, Brooke finally understood the real danger surrounding her. Not Sean's money, not the acquisition, not even the audit itself. It was the fact that Sean no longer seemed emotionally reachable, and people were hardest to stop once they became calm enough to let evidence speak for them. Then Sean slid the email folder toward legal. Add this to formal review. Brooke's face drained of color completely. Sean, he interrupted softly. From this point forward, communication goes through counsel. And for the first time since their marriage began, Brooke Richardson looked at her husband, and realized she no longer knew how to control the conversation. The offices of Caldwell, Pierce, and Rowe occupied the top 3 floors of a steel and glass tower overlooking downtown Phoenix. Quiet elevators, muted carpeting, dark walnut walls, the kind of place designed to make wealthy people feel protected. Sean Richardson arrived Thursday morning at 8:11, carrying the same coffee mug he used every day. One receptionist offered him bottled water immediately. Another greeted him by first name. No one here saw a repairman. They saw the client responsible for nearly 12 years of acquisition business. A senior partner named Evelyn Pierce met him personally near the conference suite. "Morning, Sean." "Morning." She studied his face briefly while walking beside him. "You sleep at all?" "Enough." That answer told her everything she needed. Inside Conference Room 4, several folders already waited neatly arranged across the table. Divorce preparation, asset protection review, trust structure confirmation. Sean sat down slowly. No hesitation, but not eagerness either. Evelyn opened the top file carefully. "We reviewed the prenup again last night." Sean nodded once. The prenuptial agreement had been signed 6 weeks before the wedding. Brooke skimmed most of it while distracted by venue planning and guest lists. At the time, she joked that Sean was paranoid for a guy without money. He remembered the sentence clearly now. Evelyn slid several highlighted pages across the table. Richardson Industrial Group remains fully protected under the trust structure. Expected. She has no ownership claims against premarital holdings, inherited property, or protected corporate assets. Sean leaned back slightly. Outside the windows, Phoenix traffic crawled through morning heat beneath pale desert sunlight. Everything in the city kept moving normally, while his marriage quietly collapsed inside legal paperwork. That part felt strangely fitting. No dramatic explosion, just documents. Evelyn continued. "The unauthorized financial activity strengthens your position considerably." Sean looked down at another folder. Recovered emails, vendor trails, loan documentation. Brooke's name appeared across too many pages now. Not once had Sean enjoyed seeing it there. That surprised him a little. He expected anger. Instead, he mostly felt exhaustion. Evelyn studied him carefully. "You're taking this calmly." "Should I be screaming?" "Some clients do." Sean looked toward the window again. She already embarrassed herself enough. That answer stayed with Evelyn longer than he realized, because it revealed something important. Sean wasn't trying to destroy Brooke emotionally. He was trying to separate himself from damage. There was a difference. At 8:43, another attorney entered carrying updated financial summaries. Additional findings from the audit team. He handed the folder to Sean. Inside sat a timeline of suspicious reimbursement activity tied to Brooke's department over 22 months. Shell vendors, duplicated invoices, expense laundering. None of it looked sophisticated enough to survive serious scrutiny, which meant Brooke probably never expected scrutiny. Why would she? Her husband fixed air conditioners. Sean flipped another page, then stopped. A screenshot from an internal group chat appeared attached near the back. "Lindsay, you still with the repair guy, Brooke? Please?" Sean would never leave. He knows he can't do better. Another message underneath. "Trevor, at least he's loyal." Brooke loyal and clueless. Timestamp 11 months earlier. Sean stared at the screen quietly. Not because the insults shocked him, because they suddenly explained years of subtle behavior all at once. The hidden wedding ring at networking events, the dismissive introductions, the constant corrections in public. Brooke hadn't merely become embarrassed by him, she had rewritten him into a joke, a safe joke, the kind people tell when they believe someone lacks the power to answer back. Evelyn watched Sean's expression carefully. "Do you want that included in Discovery Records?" Sean closed the file. "No." The attorney looked surprised. "It helps establish pattern." "I know." "Then why exclude it?" Sean rested both hands flat against the table. "Because this isn't about revenge." The room stayed quiet. Evelyn nodded slowly after a moment. That answer explained why Sean Richardson built businesses successfully. He separated emotion from action better than almost anyone she had represented. At 9:26, Sean's phone vibrated across the table. Brooke calling. He stared at the screen. Third call today, 22nd call since yesterday afternoon. He let it ring out again. Evelyn noticed. "You haven't spoken privately?" "No." "You should prepare for emotional escalation." Sean almost smiled faintly. Brooke already escalated emotionally. That's how we got here. Another attorney entered carrying fresh copies of legal notices. Suspension paperwork from West Frame just finalized. He placed the documents beside Sean. Effective immediately, Brooke Richardson was suspended pending completion of financial review. Corporate account access restricted. Vendor authorization privileges revoked. Mandatory legal cooperation required. Sean read the language silently. Precise, cold, necessary. He signed acknowledgement forms without comment. Meanwhile, across Scottsdale, Brooke sat alone inside her office staring at the suspension email for nearly 6 straight minutes. Employees moved carefully outside her glass walls now. Nobody entered casually anymore. Nobody lingered nearby. Fear spread socially before facts ever did. Brooke understood that instinctively. Her phone buzzed constantly. Trevor texted first. "What the hell is going on?" Then Lindsay, "Claire says legal is involved." Brooke ignored both. Another email arrived from Human Resources requesting immediate surrender of company-issued devices for audit imaging. Her chest tightened harder. This was becoming real too fast. Not marriage trouble, corporate exposure, legal exposure. She opened Sean's contact again. Another call. Voicemail. Brooke slammed the phone down onto her desk, harder than intended. Then she stood abruptly and paced toward the office windows. The Scottsdale skyline shimmered beneath noon sunlight. Luxury apartments, glass office towers, restaurants where she spent years trying to look successful enough to belong. Now every reflection in the glass looked unstable. Her office door opened carefully. Claire stepped inside. Brooke turned immediately. "Did he do this?" Claire hesitated. "The suspension came through legal." "That's not what I asked." Claire closed the door quietly behind her. "You used his financial identity for a loan, Brooke. It was temporary. You forged authorization." Brooke's eyes hardened. "You're taking his side now." Claire looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I'm taking the side that survives documentation." The sentence hit brutally hard because it sounded true. Brooke crossed her arms tightly. "You think he's some genius because he hid money?" "No," Claire replied quietly. "I think he's dangerous because he stayed calm after hearing what you said about him." Silence filled the office. Brooke looked away first. Last night replayed again in fragments. Broke and pathetic. Dependable. The table laughing. Sean cutting steak quietly while everyone underestimated him together. Brooke suddenly felt physically sick remembering it. Not guilt exactly. Something more humiliating. Miscalculation. She had mocked a man who already knew the entire room depended financially on him. Claire spoke carefully. You still don't understand what's happening. Brooke looked back sharply. Then explain it. Claire lowered her voice. Most powerful people need others to know they're powerful. Sean didn't. The office became quiet again. Brooke slowly sat back down behind the desk. For the first time in years, she looked genuinely uncertain of herself. Not socially uncertain, existentially uncertain. Because Sean's silence had hidden an entire reality beside her marriage. And now she couldn't stop asking herself one terrifying question: if she misunderstood him this completely, what else had she never noticed? Across downtown Phoenix, Sean signed the final page of preliminary divorce preparation documents. Evelyn gathered the files neatly. We can file whenever you're ready. Sean looked at the signature line for a long moment. 7 years of marriage reduced to paperwork waiting inside expensive folders. Then he capped his pen carefully. Not yet, he said quietly. But even as he spoke, Sean already understood something painful. The marriage itself had probably ended long before the paperwork arrived. He had simply been the last person willing to admit it. Claire Whitmore waited until nearly 7:40 p.m. before going to Sean Richardson's office. Most employees had already left West Frame Creative for the evening. The building felt hollow after business hours. Dimmed hall lights reflected across glass office walls, while vacuum cleaners hummed faintly somewhere down the corridor. The temporary acquisition office remained lit. Sean sat alone inside, reviewing financial summaries beneath a desk lamp. No jacket, sleeves rolled once at the forearms, reading glasses resting low on his nose. Claire stopped briefly outside the glass wall before knocking lightly against the open door. Sean looked up. Come in. She stepped inside carrying a black external hard drive and a folder thick with printed emails. I found more. Sean removed the glasses slowly. What kind? Claire placed the hard drive carefully onto the desk. Archived communications from senior marketing accounts. He looked at the drive, then at her. You didn't have to bring these personally. Yes, Claire said quietly, I did. The room fell silent for a moment. Outside the window, Scottsdale traffic glowed red and white beneath the darkening Arizona sky. Sean leaned back slightly in his chair. Sit down. Claire sat across from him carefully. For the first time since this started, neither of them immediately discussed financial records. Claire studied the office instead. Minimalist. No family photos, no awards, ego, just work. That matched Sean more than the expensive tower ever could. He opened the folder first. Inside sat printed email chains, reimbursement discussions, vendor authorizations, and internal executive conversations. Then one particular thread caught his attention. Subject line dinner. Friday? Bring your blue-collar billionaire. Sean read silently. Lindsay. Is Sean actually coming? Brooke? Unfortunately. Trevor. Be nice. Maybe he'll fix your AC for free. Brooke. Please. Sean barely understands investment accounts. Another message farther down Brooke. He's too pathetic to leave anyway. Claire watched Sean's face carefully while he read. Again, no outward reaction, but she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Fatigue, not emotional collapse, just weariness. As if each message confirmed something he already suspected, but hoped wasn't fully true. Finally, Sean closed the folder gently. Claire spoke first. "I didn't know about those messages until today." He nodded once. "I figured. I should have said something at dinner. You didn't write them." I still sat there. Sean looked toward the dark windows for several seconds before answering. "Most people do." That sentence bothered Claire more than blame would have, because he wasn't excusing her. He was describing human behavior calmly enough to make it feel universal. Claire folded her hands together tightly. "Brooke talks differently when you're not around." Sean almost smiled faintly. "I know." "No, I mean," Claire hesitated. "She made you sound weak." "Weak people usually need witnesses," Sean replied. The sentence stayed in Claire's head immediately. She realized then why Sean unnerved powerful people. Not because he controlled money, because he observed character quietly and remembered everything. Claire looked down at the hard drive. "There's more on there." "What kind of more?" "Private executive chats." Sean's eyes returned to her. Claire took a slow breath. "Some of them are ugly." He reached for the drive without hesitation. "I've seen ugly before." Claire watched him connect the drive to his laptop. Folders opened across the screen. Archived Slack exports, executive group threads, vendor side channels. Sean clicked through silently. Message after message appeared. Some discussed billing manipulation. Some coordinated deleted records. Others were worse. Mocking. Cruel. Casual. The kind of cruelty educated professionals performed when convinced there would never be consequences. One message thread stopped Sean's scrolling completely. "Brooke, I swear if Sean wore one more stained work shirt to dinner, I was going to die." Lindsay, "Then leave him." Brooke, "Why he's loyal, useful, and easy to control." Claire looked away instinctively. Not because the words shocked her anymore, because hearing them silently read by the person they targeted felt unbearable. The room remained quiet except for the soft clicking of Sean's trackpad. Finally, Claire spoke again. "I don't think Brooke understands what she sounds like." Sean continued, looking at the screen. "No," he said calmly. "She understands perfectly." That answer landed hard, because it came without bitterness. Only certainty. Claire shifted slightly in her chair. "You still defending her in legal review?" Sean looked up. "What do you mean?" "You excluded some personal communications from discovery." Claire had clearly spoken with legal staff more than she should have. Sean noticed, but he answered anyway. "Humiliation isn't evidence." Claire studied him carefully. "Most people would bury her with this." Sean closed the laptop halfway. "Most people mistake revenge for strength." Another silence. Then Claire asked the question she had been holding back all day. "Why live like that?" Sean looked genuinely confused. "Like what? The truck, the work shirts, the repair jobs." A faint crease formed between his eyebrows. "I like the work. You own half the industrial space west of Phoenix. That doesn't mean compressors stop breaking." Claire almost laughed despite herself. Then she realized he meant it literally. Sean enjoyed repairing things. Physical problems. Clear outcomes. Machines failed for understandable reasons. People were harder. He leaned back slightly again. My father worked construction his whole life, he said quietly. He used to say money changes how strangers treat you, but work changes how you see yourself. Claire listened carefully. Sean continued. When he died, there were 200 people at the funeral. Roofers, mechanics, welders, truck drivers. He paused briefly. None of them cared how much he owned. Claire noticed his voice soften slightly for the first time. They cared that he showed up when things broke. The room grew quiet again. Now Claire understood something else about Sean Richardson. The simplicity wasn't an act. The restraint wasn't a disguise. He genuinely valued ordinary things more than status, which meant Brooke had spent years mocking the exact qualities that made him stable. Claire lowered her eyes briefly. I think she's scared now. Sean looked toward the window again. She should be scared of legal exposure. You know, that's not what I meant. He didn't answer immediately. Traffic lights reflected softly across the office glass behind him. Finally, he said, Brooke stopped seeing me clearly a long time ago. Claire swallowed once. Do you still love her? That question finally brought a visible pause from Sean, longer than any financial discussion had. He removed the reading glasses completely and set them on the desk. Then he answered honestly, I think I loved who she used to be. The sentence carried no anger. That somehow made it sadder. Claire looked toward the hard drive again. There's one more thing. Sean waited. She told people you'd never leave because you didn't have options. A faint smile touched Sean's face then. Not amused, just tired. People who underestimate others usually reveal more about themselves than the person they're insulting. Claire nodded slowly. She understood that now better than ever. The office lights hummed softly overhead. Outside, the city continued moving beneath warm desert darkness. Inside the room, Sean reopened the laptop and continued reviewing archived records while Claire sat quietly across from him. Neither spoke for nearly a minute. Then Sean stopped scrolling suddenly. His eyes narrowed slightly at a new email chain appearing on screen. Brooke. If Sean ever actually knew how much money moves through these accounts, he'd panic. Attached below sat authorization records linked to another undisclosed financial transfer. Larger than the others, much larger. Claire saw the amount appear reflected faintly in Sean's glasses. $230,000. And for the first time all evening, Sean's expression became completely unreadable. By Friday morning, Brooke Richardson had stopped sleeping. Dark circles hid beneath expensive concealer. Her phone battery rarely lasted past noon because she spent every hour refreshing emails, legal notices, and social media reactions, searching for signs the situation might still be survivable. It wasn't just the audit anymore. It was visibility. People knew something had happened. And in Brooke's world, perception mattered almost as much as truth. At 6:48 a.m., she sat alone at the kitchen island, scrolling through Instagram while cold coffee rested untouched beside her. The house felt unfamiliar now. Too quiet. Sean had stayed out past midnight the night before working from the acquisition office downtown. When he finally returned, he slept in the guest room without explanation. No argument, no confrontation, just distance. That distance frightened Brooke more each day. because anger still meant emotional investment. Calm separation did not. She opened Instagram again. 3 messages from friends asking vague questions. You okay? Heard something weird about West Frame. Call me. Brooke ignored them. Then she opened her own story feed and stared at the blank posting screen for several seconds. Her thumb hovered. A dangerous instinct slowly formed. Narrative control. If she framed the story first, maybe she could survive it socially. Brooke began typing. Sometimes the people closest to you hide who they really are. Control can wear many faces. She added a black background. Minimalist, elegant, vague enough to imply victimhood without specifics. Then she posted it. For 5 seconds, the action felt empowering. By the 10th second, regret started creeping in. At 7:02 a.m., Sean entered the kitchen wearing jeans and a dark gray work jacket. Not a suit, not executive clothing, just Sean. He grabbed coffee from the machine quietly, without looking at her. Brooke stared at him. The normalness of him suddenly felt impossible. How could someone move through the world carrying that much power and still look so ordinary? Did you sleep here? She asked carefully. In the guest room. Silence followed. Then Brooke tried again. We need to talk. Sean poured coffee into a travel mug. We've talked. No, we haven't. He tightened the lid calmly. We've had legal discussions. Brooke stood up immediately. That's exactly the problem. Finally, Sean looked at her. Tired eyes. Controlled face. No visible hatred. Somehow that made it harder. You forged loans in my name, he said quietly. I'm not sure what kind of conversation you expect after that. Brooke crossed her arms defensively. I already told you I paid most of it back. Most. It was temporary. You keep saying temporary like it changes the behavior. The words hit sharply because he said them without raising his voice. Brooke looked away first. Sean reached for his keys. Then his phone buzzed. A notification appeared briefly across the screen. Claire Whitmore. Audit findings updated. Brooke noticed immediately. You're talking to Claire privately now. Sean slipped the phone into his pocket. She works for the acquisition team. She's my friend. A faint pause. Then Sean answered carefully. I don't think Claire knows what that word means anymore. Brooke flinched slightly, because part of her knew he was right. Claire had become distant fast once legal exposure appeared. Not cruel, careful. Like everyone else now. Sean headed toward the garage. Brooke followed him immediately. So that's it, she demanded. You're just destroying everything. Sean stopped beside the doorway. For a moment, Brooke thought he might finally lose control emotionally. Instead, he asked one quiet question. What exactly did I destroy? The silence afterward felt suffocating, because Brooke had no answer that didn't expose something ugly. Sean opened the garage door and left. The old Ford truck started seconds later. Then he drove away. Brooke stood alone in the garage, listening to the sound disappear down the street. At 8:26 a.m., her Instagram story already had dozens of views. Several sympathetic responses appeared. You deserve honesty. Stay strong. Men like that always manipulate. Eventually. Brooke read the messages repeatedly, searching for comfort. Then another notification appeared. A direct email from Caldwell, Pierce, and Rowe. Subject, immediate retraction request. Brooke opened it instantly. The legal language was clean and brutal. Her social media statement potentially constituted reputational defamation related to ongoing acquisition proceedings. Any further misleading public implications regarding Sean Richardson or Richardson Industrial Group would result in formal legal response. Brooke stared at the email. Her pulse accelerated sharply. They were monitoring her now. Not emotionally, professionally. The story post suddenly looked childish, dangerous too. She deleted it immediately, but screenshots already existed. Things always spread faster once people smelled scandal. By noon, Lindsay Carr finally called. Brooke answered immediately. Thank God. Lindsay sounded nervous. So, what's actually happening? Brooke walked quickly into her office and shut the door. Sean's blowing everything out of proportion. About the money stuff, it wasn't like that. Lindsay hesitated. Claire says legal found fake vendors. Brooke closed her eyes briefly. Claire talks too much. Brooke. What? Another hesitation. Then Lindsay lowered her voice. Did you seriously not know your husband was rich? The question landed harder than Brooke expected, because hearing it aloud made the entire situation sound absurd. No, Brooke answered quietly. Lindsay gave a short, disbelieving laugh. How is that even possible? Brooke stared through the office windows toward downtown Scottsdale. Because she never asked. Because she assumed. Because she thought appearances explained everything. But she could not say any of that aloud. Instead, she snapped defensively. He hid it. Lindsay stayed quiet for a second too long. Then came the sentence Brooke dreaded. Did he really hide it? Or did you just never pay attention? The line disconnected a minute later. Brooke remained frozen beside her desk. For the first time since this started, embarrassment began overtaking fear. Not embarrassment about the audit, about herself, about how obvious it now looked. Meanwhile, downtown Phoenix moved through another dry Arizona afternoon, while Sean sat inside Richardson Industrial Group's executive office, reviewing final acquisition recommendations. Claire stood beside the conference table holding updated audit summaries. Additional discrepancies confirmed, she said quietly. Sean nodded. Criminal exposure? Possibly. He read the report silently. Then Claire hesitated before speaking again. There's something else. Sean looked up. Brooke posted online this morning. I know. Claire blinked slightly. You already saw it. Legal flagged it within minutes. Claire studied him carefully. You really prepared for everything, didn't you? Sean leaned back slowly. No. Feels like you did. He looked toward the city skyline outside the windows. Prepared people still get disappointed. That sentence stayed with Claire. Because despite all the evidence, all the systems, all the protection, Sean still looked like a man mourning something quietly. Not his reputation, not money, trust. Claire placed another folder onto the table. Final executive meeting is Monday. Sean nodded once. West Frame's future would be decided there. Layoffs, legal referrals, leadership restructuring, everything. Claire gathered her files slowly. Then she paused near the door. Do you know what scares Brooke most right now? Sean looked back toward the paperwork. No. She thought she understood exactly who you were. The office became quiet. Then Sean answered softly, That makes two of us. And for the first time since the acquisition began, Claire realized Sean Richardson was no longer simply investigating corporate fraud. He was trying to understand how someone could live beside another person for 7 years and never truly see them at all. Monday morning arrived hot even by Arizona standards. By 8:15 a.m. heat already shimmered above the streets outside Camelback Tower, while employees entered West Frame Creative carrying coffee cups and nervous expressions. Nobody spoke loudly anymore. Not after the suspension notices, not after legal teams occupied entire conference rooms, and definitely not after rumors spread that Richardson Industrial Group planned a complete executive restructuring before noon. Brooke Richardson entered the building wearing a navy designer suit and dark sunglasses despite the indoor lighting. She moved quickly through the lobby, head high, back straight, trying to preserve whatever remained of her image. But people looked away too fast when she passed now. That hurt more than staring would have. Inside the elevator, Brooke checked her reflection carefully. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, controlled breathing. She repeated one sentence silently inside her head the entire ride upward. "You can still fix this." The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. Two security officers stood near the conference hallway. Brooke slowed immediately. Not panic, not yet, but close. The larger conference room at the center of the floor already buzzed with low conversation when she entered. Executives sat along both sides of the long glass table reviewing final acquisition packets. Martin Feld looked exhausted. Ryan Beckett refused to make eye contact with anyone. Claire Whitmore sat near the far end quietly organizing financial reports. And at the head of the room sat Sean Richardson, calm, focused, reviewing documents while sunlight reflected softly across the table. Brooke stared at him for one suspended second. He looked exactly like the man she married, and completely different. The room gradually quieted as she approached her seat. Sean looked up briefly. Nothing in his expression changed. "Morning," he said. Not warm, not hostile, just acknowledgement. Brooke sat down carefully. The chair suddenly felt colder than usual. At 8:31, Marcus Calloway from Caldwell, Pierce, and Rowe stood beside the presentation screens. "Let's begin." A series of slides appeared immediately. Audit summaries, financial recovery projections, executive recommendations. Then came the legal findings. The room tightened instantly. Marcus spoke with surgical calm. After comprehensive review, Richardson Industrial Group has concluded that West Frame Creative remains operationally viable under revised leadership structure. Several employees visibly relaxed. Then Marcus continued. However, multiple executives violated internal financial compliance standards. The next slide displayed names: Ryan Beckett, Dana Ellis, Brooke Richardson. Nobody looked surprised anymore. That somehow made it worse. Brooke kept her face perfectly still while her pulse hammered against her ribs. Marcus continued outlining financial irregularities, unverified vendors, improper reimbursement routing, unauthorized financial leverage. The language remained professional, but every sentence stripped away another layer of reputation. Sean sat silently through all of it, not once interrupting, not once looking satisfied. Claire noticed that carefully. Brooke noticed too, and for some reason, his lack of cruelty made the situation harder to survive. Finally, Marcus reached the final recommendation slide. Effective immediately, he said calmly, "West Frame Creative will transition into Richardson Industrial Media Holdings under new executive oversight." Another slide appeared. Staff retention plan. Most employees would remain. Departments unaffected by fraud investigations would continue operating. Benefits protected. Operational expansion planned. A visible shift moved through the room. Relief. Sean had not come to destroy the company, only the corruption inside it. That distinction mattered. Marcus continued. Employees directly connected to compliance violations are terminated effective immediately pending additional legal review. The next slide appeared. Brooke's name remained highlighted in red. She stared at it silently. No breathing, no movement, just disbelief finally turning solid. Martin rubbed both hands across his face. Ryan whispered something under his breath that sounded like a prayer. Claire lowered her eyes. Then Marcus delivered the final sentence. Supporting documentation will be transferred to outside counsel and financial investigators for formal review. Brooke finally spoke. This is insane. Her voice cracked slightly. Nobody answered immediately. She looked toward Sean. You're really doing this? He met her eyes calmly. I'm protecting the company. You're punishing me. No, Sean replied quietly. The records did that. The room went silent again. Brooke stood abruptly. This entire process is biased. Marcus remained composed. The evidence was independently verified. You went through my private communications. You used company systems. Brooke looked around desperately now, searching for allies. Nobody moved. Not Martin, not Ryan, not even Claire. Especially not Claire. That realization hit hardest. Brooke laughed once suddenly, sharp. Unstable. So this is what happens now. Everybody just turns on me because my husband has money. Claire looked up immediately. No, she said quietly. People stepped away because the documents are real. The sentence landed heavily. Brooke stared at her in disbelief. You too. Claire held her gaze. You called him pathetic in front of strangers. Brooke flinched. Not because of the insult itself, because everyone in the room now knew about it. Sean remained seated, still calm. That calmness finally broke something inside Brooke. You think you're better than me now? She snapped toward him. Because you hid money. Because you manipulated everyone. Sean answered carefully. I didn't manipulate anyone. That's a lie. No, he said softly. I just let people show me who they were. The room became painfully quiet. Security officers near the conference doors shifted subtly, not threatening, prepared. Brooke noticed. Humiliation spread visibly across her face now. Not elegant embarrassment, real humiliation. The kind that burns physically. She pointed towards Sean. You sat there while people laughed at you. Yes. Why, Sean looked at her for a long moment before answering. Because I wanted to see if you would stop them. The sentence hit harder than anything else that morning. Claire looked away immediately. Even Marcus paused briefly. Brooke's expression collapsed for half a second. Because she knew the answer. She never stopped them. Not once. Sometimes she started it. Brooke grabbed her purse from the table suddenly. This place is unbelievable. Marcus nodded slightly towards security. Two officers stepped forward professionally. Miss Richardson, one said calmly, "We'll escort you to collect personal belongings." Brooke stared at them in disbelief. You're escorting me out standard procedure. The entire room watched silently. That silence felt enormous now. Brooke looked toward Sean one final time, expecting something. Anger, regret, sympathy, anything. But Sean simply sat at the head of the table reviewing final restructuring notes beside stacks of financial documents. Working. That hurt most of all, because the company still moved forward without her. The world had not stopped. Brooke laughed bitterly under her breath. Then she picked up her purse. As security walked beside her toward the doors, nobody in the room spoke. Nobody defended her. Nobody followed. The hallway outside looked longer than ever before. Glass walls reflected her movement from every angle, while employees pretended not to stare. Some still did. Whispers started immediately once the doors closed behind her. Brooke heard pieces of them anyway. That's her. Jesus. I heard the husband owns everything. The HVAC guy. The HVAC guy. Brooke nearly stumbled hearing it, because suddenly she understood the full shape of the humiliation. The man she spent years minimizing now controlled the building she was being removed from. At the far end of the hallway, Brooke stopped once and looked back through the glass conference room walls. Sean remained seated at the head of the table, calm, focused, speaking quietly with attorneys while sunlight poured across polished glass surfaces. He did not stand when she looked back, did not chase her, did not defend her. He simply continued moving forward. And for the first time since their marriage began, Brooke Richardson understood what real power actually looked like. It did not need to raise its voice. The house on North 12th Street sounded different. At night now, too quiet. No television running upstairs. No music from Brooke's phone speaker while she moved between rooms. No distracted conversations drifting from the kitchen. Just silence. Sean Richardson unlocked the front door at 9:18 p.m. and stepped inside carrying 2 cardboard archive boxes from the garage. The living room lights remained off. Moonlight stretched across hardwood floors in pale silver bands, while the air conditioner hummed softly through ceiling vents overhead. Sean placed the boxes near the hallway. One contained financial records and legal paperwork. The other held personal things. Old photographs, a leather-bound notebook, his father's watch. Small objects people carried quietly through years without realizing how attached they became to them. Sean loosened the collar of his work shirt and looked around the house slowly. 7 years. That number kept returning to him lately. 7 years of dinners, mortgage payments, laundry, arguments, vacations, small routines repeated long enough to feel permanent. And now the entire marriage seemed to exist mostly inside filing cabinets and legal folders. He walked toward the guest room first. A half-packed duffel bag rested beside the bed from nights he had spent working downtown during the acquisition process. The room smelled faintly of detergent and paper. Temporary. That word described everything lately. At 9:31, headlights swept briefly across the front windows. Sean stopped moving immediately. A car door closed outside, then another. Brooke. He already knew by the pace of the footsteps approaching the porch. Not confident anymore. Careful. The door opened slowly. Brooke stepped inside carrying her purse against one shoulder. No designer confidence tonight. No sharp corporate posture. She looked exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that reached beyond sleep. Her eyes landed immediately on the cardboard boxes near the hallway. Something inside her expression tightened. You're moving out. Sean closed the guest room door quietly behind him. No. Brooke looked at the boxes again. Then, what is this separating things? The sentence landed softly, still painful. Brooke shut the front door behind her. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence between them had changed shape over the past week. It no longer felt angry, just final. Brooke finally set her purse down carefully on the kitchen counter. I didn't know where else to go tonight. Sean nodded once. No invitation followed. Brooke wrapped both arms around herself loosely. People are talking, I figured. Lindsay won't answer my calls anymore. Sean said nothing. Trevor hired an attorney, still nothing. Brooke gave a short, bitter laugh. Apparently, everybody suddenly cares about ethics. That almost sounded like the old Brooke again. Defensive, sharp. But the energy collapsed halfway through the sentence. She looked around the kitchen slowly. The same kitchen where she once mocked Sean for fixing a leaking sink himself instead of hiring plumbers. The same kitchen where she told him he lacked ambition. Now the room looked unfamiliar to her somehow, like the house belonged more to him than it ever had to her. Sean walked toward the refrigerator and grabbed a bottle of water. You want one? Brooke stared briefly, then shook her head. That small act of normal politeness nearly broke her composure more than cruelty would have. Sean leaned against the counter quietly. Brooke looked at him carefully. You're really not angry. I was. When? Before. The answer confused her. What does that mean? Sean twisted the bottle cap slowly. It means anger passes. Another silence. Brooke looked toward the archive boxes again. So what now lawyers finish paperwork? You make it sound like replacing brakes. It's paperwork. Brooke laughed softly once, under her breath. God. Sean drank some water, then set the bottle down beside the sink. Finally, Brooke stepped closer. I came here to apologize. He looked at her calmly. For what? The question caught her off guard immediately, because there were too many possible answers now. The money, the lies, the humiliation, the public mockery. Brooke hesitated too long. That's kind of the problem, isn't it? Sean said quietly. She swallowed hard. I never thought I know. No. Sean, listen to me. He waited. Brooke rubbed both hands across her face tiredly. I thought you were hiding from life. Sean remained still. You acted so small sometimes. The honesty in the sentence hurt more than cruelty, because Brooke no longer sounded proud of it, just ashamed. Sean nodded once slowly. I like simple things. I know that now. No, he corrected gently. You noticed it now. That distinction settled heavily into the room. Brooke looked away first. Sean continued quietly. You spent years believing appearance explained character. That's not fair, isn't it? Brooke opened her mouth, stopped, because, again, no answer existed that didn't expose the truth. She moved toward the dining table and sat down heavily. I embarrassed myself. Yes. The directness of the answer stunned her slightly. Not cruel, not softened, just honest. Brooke stared down at the tabletop. I kept waiting for you to fight back. Sean looked toward the dark windows. I shouldn't have needed to. The sentence sat between them quietly, and Brooke finally understood something painful. The entire marriage had become a test Sean kept failing without realizing he was being tested. The right clothes, the right conversations, the right image, the right status. And every time he remained himself, Brooke interpreted it as weakness, She looked up slowly. When did you stop loving me? Sean's expression changed slightly then. Not colder, sadder. I don't know. That means yes. He took a long breath before answering. I think I stopped recognizing you first. Tears finally appeared in Brooke's eyes. Real ones this time. No performance, no audience, just exhaustion. I was stupid. Yes. She laughed painfully through tears. You really don't soften anything anymore. Sean leaned against the counter quietly. I spent years softening things. The room went silent again. Then Brooke asked the question she feared most. Was any of it real? Sean looked genuinely confused. Our marriage. He stared at her for several seconds before answering. Yes. The answer came immediately. No hesitation. That hurt even more. Because Brooke suddenly realized Sean had loved her honestly the entire time, while she spent years editing him into something easier to explain socially. Tears rolled slowly down her face now. I'm sorry. Sean studied her carefully. And for the first time all night, something inside him visibly shifted. Not forgiveness, recognition. Because he believed she meant it. But he also understood something else. The apology arrived after consequences, after exposure, after collapse. That mattered. Brooke wiped her eyes quickly. I never thought you were a bad man. Sean nodded once. I know. She stopped again, then finally whispered the ugliest truth in the room. I thought I deserved someone bigger. Sean looked at her calmly, and now Brooke stared at him for a long moment. Then her eyes drifted toward the old Ford keys sitting beside his wallet on the counter. The same truck, the same man. Only her perception had changed. That's the problem, she whispered. You were. The room became very quiet after that. Outside, warm desert wind moved softly through neighborhood trees. Inside the house, Sean looked toward the archive boxes waiting near the hallway. 7 years reduced to divided belongings and difficult truths. Finally, Brooke stood slowly. So, this is really over. Sean didn't answer immediately. Then he spoke softly. I think it ended before either of us admitted it. Brooke nodded once. Tears returned briefly. Then she grabbed her purse and moved toward the front door. Before leaving, she stopped. You know what hurts most? Sean waited. You never once tried to humiliate me back. He looked at her calmly. That wouldn't have fixed anything. Brooke stared at him one last time. Then she walked out into the Arizona night and closed the door quietly behind her. Sean remained standing alone in the kitchen long after the sound of her car disappeared. 3 months later, Phoenix entered monsoon season. Dust storms rolled across the valley some evenings, thick enough to swallow entire highways in brown haze before sudden rain hammered the city for 15 violent minutes at a time. Sean Richardson liked those storms. They cleaned the air. By August, the divorce was finalized. Quietly. No dramatic courtroom scenes, no public statements. Just signatures, asset divisions, legal transfers, and the formal ending of 7 years that once seemed stable from the outside. Brooke Richardson disappeared from most Scottsdale social circles almost immediately afterward. Not because people hated her, because scandal frightened ambitious people. The financial investigation surrounding West Frame never became criminal in the public sense, but several civil actions remained active. Brooke settled some claims privately. Others continued through arbitration channels she no longer discussed openly. The company terminated Trevor Hale's consulting contracts entirely. Ryan Beckett accepted a compliance settlement and relocated to Denver. Lindsay Carr stopped posting photos from luxury restaurants for almost 2 months after screenshots from old group chats circulated quietly among mutual acquaintances. Nobody escaped untouched. That was another thing Sean understood now. Contempt spread damage in every direction eventually. Richardson Industrial Media Holdings officially replaced West Frame Creative by early September. Most employees stayed. Operations stabilized. New client retention numbers improved within 6 weeks once internal accounting systems were rebuilt. Sean kept his promise about protecting innocent staff. No unnecessary layoffs. No revenge restructuring. The creative department remained mostly intact under tighter financial oversight. Claire Whitmore became permanent Chief Financial Officer 3 weeks later. She accepted the promotion carefully, almost reluctantly. The first time Sean offered her the role officially, she stared at the paperwork for nearly a full minute before speaking. "You trust me that much?" Sean sat across from her inside the Scottsdale executive office reviewing quarterly reports. "No." Claire blinked once. Then he continued calmly. "I trust systems. You respect systems." That answer made more sense to her than compliments would have. Claire signed the contract that afternoon. Their relationship remained professional afterward. Respectful, measured, no hidden tension, no dramatic romance growing from shared trauma. Just two people who understood the cost of carelessness better than they had months earlier. Meanwhile, Sean's personal life changed far less visibly than outsiders expected. That surprised everyone. He still drove the same faded Ford truck, still stopped at the Chevron station before sunrise, still bought black coffee and gas station sandwiches from the same cashier 3 mornings a week. One Thursday afternoon in September, an HVAC technician from Desert Crest Heating and Cooling nearly dropped a wrench after realizing Sean now technically owned the commercial building where they service rooftop units. Sean simply helped him replace a compressor motor anyway. The technician later told coworkers he acts exactly the same because he was exactly the same. Money had never been the disguise. Other people's assumptions were. At 5:42 a.m. one morning, Sean stood alone on the rooftop of a refrigerated logistics warehouse west of Phoenix, watching sunrise spread slowly across the desert. The air smelled faintly of rain and warm concrete. Below him, freight trucks rolled through loading bays, while workers in reflective vests shouted over reversing trailers. Movement. Always movement. Sean rested both hands against the rooftop railing quietly. The city stretched endlessly beneath soft orange light. Downtown towers in the distance. Industrial corridors farther west. Miles of neighborhoods filled with ordinary people starting ordinary mornings. For the first time in months, the silence inside his head no longer felt heavy. Just quiet. His phone vibrated once in his pocket. Claire. Quarterly numbers finalized. He typed a short response. Send them over. Another vibration arrived seconds later. Unknown number. Sean stared at the screen for a moment, then answered. Hello. A brief pause. Then Brooke's voice. Soft. Careful. I didn't think you'd pick up. Sean looked toward the horizon. What do you need? Another pause. Brooke hesitated. I wanted to tell you the civil settlement finalized. Okay. They reduced the penalties. That's good. The conversation nearly ended there. Not hostile, just distant. Brooke spoke again finally. I started consulting part-time. Sean listened quietly. Smaller company, she continued. Nothing like before. He nodded slightly, though she could not see it. How's Phoenix? She asked after another silence. Hot. A faint laugh escaped her. Real this time. Not sharp. Not performative. For several seconds, neither spoke. Wind moved across the rooftop softly. Finally, Brooke asked the question she probably rehearsed before calling. Do you hate me? Sean looked out across the desert while trucks continued moving below. No. The answer came honestly. Brooke inhaled quietly on the other end of the line. I deserved it if you did. That wouldn't change anything. Another silence followed. Then Brooke spoke again, voice lower now. You know what I realized after all this? Sean waited. I never actually cared about money. She paused. I cared about what I thought money said about people. That sentence stayed with him, because it was probably the most honest thing she had ever said. Sean leaned against the railing slightly, and now Brooke exhaled softly. Now I think I confuse status with character. Below the rooftop, forklifts moved pallets beneath rising sunlight. Ordinary work. Necessary work. Sean watched it quietly. Most people do, he said. Brooke laughed faintly again. You really don't say more than necessary, do you? No. Another pause. Then she asked carefully, Are you happy? The question surprised him slightly. Sean looked toward the horizon again before answering. I'm calmer. Brooke stayed silent after that. Maybe because she understood the difference now. Happiness was loud in the version of life she used to chase. Expensive dinners, recognition, social approval, but calmness. That was something deeper, something harder to fake. Finally, Brooke spoke quietly. I'm sorry, Sean. This time, the apology sounded different. Not panicked, not strategic, just tired and honest. Sean closed his eyes briefly against the morning wind. I know. The call ended a minute later. No dramatic reconciliation, no promises, just closure, arriving softly enough to feel real. Sean slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked out across the waking city again. The same city where people once saw him as small because they only measured visible things. Old truck, work boots, repair jobs, silence. But silence had never meant weakness. Sometimes silence meant discipline. Sometimes it meant patience. And sometimes it meant a man understood his own value deeply enough that he never felt the need to announce it. Below the rooftop, workers continued unloading freight beneath the Arizona sun. Sean watched them for another minute. Then he headed back toward the stairwell carrying the same coffee thermos he always used. No audience followed him. No applause waited downstairs. Just work. And somehow, after everything that felt more peaceful than winning ever could. Some people spend years trying to look successful while quietly losing the people who truly matter. Others stay silent, work steadily, and let time reveal their value for them. Sean's story was never really about hidden money. It was about how easy it is to mistake calmness for weakness and simplicity for failure. Brooke didn't lose her marriage because Sean was secretly wealthy. She lost it because she stopped respecting the man standing in front of her long before she understood who he really was. A lot of people watching this have probably experienced something similar. Maybe someone underestimated you because of your job, your clothes, your background, or the way you carry yourself. Maybe you stayed quiet while people built the wrong story about you. The truth is real character usually reveals itself slowly, and real strength rarely needs attention to prove it exists. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who later regretted it, share your story in the comments. I read more of them than you think. And subscribe before you leave. Tomorrow's story is about a man who cleaned luxury hotel rooms for 10 years before the owner discovered who he really was.